What you know about grammar? We're continuing on our grammar playlist, discussing action verbs in this one. Drash, do you want to start us off?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about action verbs, but before that, let's quickly go over the difference between the active and passive voices.
Active versus passive. Ryu. My man on the left-hand side representing the active.
And the guy on the right is passive because he's wearing boxing gloves to pummel another human being in the face.
No, he looks pretty submissive in my opinion. He's obviously taking the fist to the face.
Surely,
Yes.
and his gritting teeth suggest their passivity.
Okay, let's continue on with this tutorial.
Alright, well, when something is written in the active voice, the subject is doing the action. So, if we write something in the active voice, for example, Mike ate the cake, Mike here, our subject, is doing the eating. Ate is our verb here. And Mike is eating the cake. He is the subject and he is doing the action.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when something is written in the passive voice, let's take this example and write it in the passive voice. Now, the subject will be receiving the action of the verb. So if we write, the cake was eaten by Mike, you can ask yourself, is the cake here doing the eating? No, the cake is being eaten by Mike. So the cake, it is not performing the action, but in fact receiving the action of the verb. So let's look at another example here.
One more example. Let's go down. Open this one.
So we have this poor store owner closed the shop. Nobody's buying pens. The pen market is plummeted.
Exactly.
Right? Read about this in Forbes the other day.
Yeah. Pens R Us went
God-
under $1 billion market
God bless
cap.
the pen salesman. So the store owner here closed the shop. He's the one doing the closing of the shop. The store owner is our subject, and closed, being our verb, is being performed by the store owner. Now, when we write this in the passive voice, the shop was closed by the store owner, you notice again that the subject is receiving the action of the verb, not performing it.
Perfect.
Right. Now back to our action verbs.
So technically we can transform any active to a passive and any passive to an active.
You can transform any passive to an active, but you can't always transform an active into a passive, and that's what we're going to talk about next when we talk about transitive and intransitive verbs.
Interesting. Okay. Let's
So
go
let's
down.
move on.
So, intransitive. I must close all these layers first that I have up.
All right, transitive and intransitive verbs. Now, these are both action verbs, but the thing to remember is that transitive verbs take a direct object. So you need a direct object to complete a transitive verb. That shopping cart there is the transitive verbs, and you see direct objects always go with them. So there are three ways to test for a direct object. One, you ask yourself, does it receive the action of the verb? So in our earlier example, Mike ate the cake is receiving the action, and in that example, the cake was our object. Another way to test for it is that if the sentence can be rewritten in the passive voice. If it can be rewritten in the passive voice, then you'll find your direct object at the beginning of the sentence. When we wrote Mike ate the cake in the passive voice, we wrote the cake was eaten by Mike. So the cake, you can see which was our object before, now becomes our subject in the beginning of the sentence when we write it in the passive voice. And the third way to test for it, the least important, but you can still remember it from time to time, is that usually the direct object can be replaced by him or them or it. So,
Perfect.
but remember the first two. It has to receive the action of the verb, and you can rewrite the sentence in the passive voice, and that's where you'll find your direct object. So let's look at a couple of examples and see if we can find our direct object. So we have here, Dave must ace the exam. Dave, you always ace your exams, do you not?
For sure.
100%. So first, let's look at our verb. Our verb here is must ace. Then we ask ourselves, who must ace? It's Dave, right? That is our subject. And what does he have to ace? The exam. Okay, so we ask ourselves, does he receive the action of the verb, the exam? Is Dave acing the exam? Yes, he is.
Most definitely.
And can we write it in the passive voice? Well, if we tried to, we would write, the exam must be aced by Dave. So boom, there we have it. We can see that the exam, we've tested for it, that is our direct object. And when we wrote it in the passive voice, the exam must be aced by Dave, the direct object began our sentence there. So let's look at one more example. That's right. I cooked a delicious meal. So here, cooked is our verb. We ask ourselves, who cooked? I cooked. That is our subject. And what did you cook? What is receiving the action of the verb here? A delicious meal. Yes, it is. Did you cook the delicious meal? Yes. Not you, Dave. You're a terrible cook.
I am. I burned my quinoa last
But
night.
somebody else. Somebody cooked a delicious meal.
For sure. Someone out there.
Right. And can we write this in the passive voice? Give it a shot there, Dave.
Passive. A little underline.
So a delicious meal, we start with our direct object here, was cooked by me. There we have it. We've written it in the passive voice. Sounds very good. Let's look at one more example. I cook very well. Okay, so cook here is our verb. Who cooks? I, not Dave, as we've already
Clearly.
established. And what do I cook? Well, it's very well receiving the action of the verb here. I cook very well. Maybe not. So let's try to write it in the passive voice and see if that works. Give that a shot. Very well
Passive.
cook I know. We can't really do it, right?
Very well cook I know. No, that doesn't sound quite proper.
Very well cook.
Very well cook I.
Cook I.
Mm.
Sounds
Very Yoda-esque.
reminiscent of a Yoda-like cartoon, we must say, for copyright issues. Please don't sue us.
Please. Please do not.
So here, very well, you can see is our adverb. It's describing how you cook, so it's not our direct object. That's why we can't write it in the passive voice. And it is not receiving the action of the verb there, because that is an intransitive verb. So it doesn't go with a direct object.
Alright, let's clear all this and we get to move on to the last part, which is indirect objects.
We've talked about the direct objects, so let's check out the indirect objects. Now that is for what, to, or for whom the action of the verb is being done. So to, for what, for whom the action of the verb is being done. And because of that, it can be rewritten as a prepositional phrase beginning with to or for. So that means that when you put the sentence in the passive voice, which you will always be able to do when you have a direct object or an indirect object, when you put it in the passive voice, the indirect object will be a part of a prepositional phrase beginning with to or for. So let's look at an example here. So we can write, he gave her a gift. Right? So gave here is our verb. Who gave? He gave, that is our subject. And what did he give her? A gift. So that is it's receiving the action of the verb. A gift is our direct object. Underline that.
Direct object. Underline that.
We're going to do a little brackets like that with an underline for our direct object. And her here is our indirect object. So he gave a gift. He gave her a gift. And when we rewrite this in the passive voice, we would write her as a gift was given to her by him. And like we said, you can find your indirect object here as part of the prepositional phrase to her. So a gift was given to her by him.
Brackets to represent the prepositional phrase.
All right, so now we can see our direct object and clearly identify who the action is being done to her. A gift was given to her by him. So it's a good practice to be able to flip sentences from active to passive in order to find your direct object and your indirect object if you're unsure whether or not they're in the sentence. And also, remember our pronoun charts from earlier. And watch your case. If the pronouns are acting as the direct object or the indirect object, then they take the object case. Remember that. So let's try this example here. She knows you and I or you and me very well. Now, knows is our verb. Who knows? She knows. And either you and I or you and me, one of these is going to be our direct objects. But which one? Well, because it's acting as the direct object, it takes the object case in the pronoun charts that we looked at earlier. So you and me is the correct pronoun reference here.
You and me.
You and me.
I think that calls for us to listen to some Penny in the Quarters. And let's end this tutorial right now. Thank you for watching. And Thank you for putting up with Dragish's singing.
Thank you.
Good. If you have any questions regarding accounting or any other material within our videos, you can tweet us at Notepirate. You can like us on Facebook to receive updates or to share any quick anecdotes about how our videos might have helped. And like always, thanks for watching us on YouTube.